What do you think about Deontay? I think I haven't talked to D since the fight. I think I've sent one text message maybe like a week or two after the fight, and he didn't respond, which makes sense. But I haven't talked to him, so I'll try to hit him up. But I think honestly that Deontay's gonna be all right. I think that this second fight with Tyson Fury, more than anything, was a wake-up call. I think that there's a process that we go through as fighters where we're basically answering questions along the way as we climb up the ladder. You know, what kind of fighter are we good against? What kind of fighter gives us trouble? What kind of fighter do I want to be? You know, I think that D was knocking everybody out, and I think that D never really got a chance to answer a lot of the questions that most of us get presented along the way to becoming a champion. And I think that it caught up with him against Tyson Fury. I think that first of all, let me say that I'm excited about the trilogy. I hope that this does not interfere with those guys getting back in the ring. I would love to see what Deontay can do differently in the ring against Tyson Fury. I think most times the people say, "Do you think he can do anything different?" I think that when you get that wake up call and you understand that some things need to improve or change or get better, so on and so forth, I think when you make that conscious decision, that's when it happens. You know, people that want to stop drinking or want to stop partying, things like that, it has to be a conscious decision on their behalf to make it happen, to make it stop. And I think that, that second fight against Tyson Fury, more than anything, was just a wake-up call for him to recognize that, some things need to improve in my boxing game in order for me not just to become a champion, but to really contend and prove that I am the best heavyweight out there in the world. I think that he easily went from top, from being number one to definitely being number two. I think that Deontay is the number two best heavyweight in the world. But then let's also remember that Tyson Fury was basically born with gloves on his hands. He's been boxing as long as he can remember. The first time I ever met Tyson Fury was we were 16, and he came over for a duel. And I think at that point in time, he was a heavyweight or just a really big kid. But his pedigree and his experience as a true fighter is really what took him over the top in terms of being able to change trainers, change your training facility, change your whole program, get a dietitian, get a nutritionist, have a chef cooking your meals and all that kind of stuff. He basically enhanced who he was as a fighter, and I don't think Deontay really knew how to do that, but I do think that Deontay knows how to do that now, and I'm looking forward to that third fight. Kenny ever used to box? I think that's a question that most people wonder but never really ask or never really knew. But my dad never boxed as a professional fighter. My dad, long story short, and the crazy thing, so Al Haymon is from Cleveland. We're from Cleveland. My dad grew up in the same boxing gym that Al Haymon's Al Haymon's brother was at. Shout out to Salvation Army Boxing Club out there in Cleveland, Ohio. So my dad boxed just a little bit from like the age of 8 to 10. And from what I know, he gave it up. And then he came back to it in his early 20s. And by then, he was basically training himself because he loved the sport and he loved to compete. He's a fighter. But he also started training other guys. So another thing that most people don't know about my dad, and this is told to me by my dad says that, so our first love is football. And he says when I was younger, I played football, but then I would also leave my practice and go coach other kids that were just playing street ball. He said he would, teach them routes and tell them to run certain plays. And so even at the early age of a teenager, my dad was coaching, 16, 17, he was coaching. Then when he got back into the sport of boxing, basically for himself, he found himself coaching other guys. So my dad probably started coaching nonstop boxing when he was about 20. So he's got 30 plus years of boxing coaching experience, but just coaching experience as in general. He's been doing that for a very long time. So I think a lot of people out there that may doubt him as a coach or says, well, Shawn Porter's the only fighter that he's had, Shawn Porter's the only champion that he's had. I think it's two things. I don't think anyone else is giving him a chance. I don't think he's giving anyone else a chance. You got to understand that, yeah, my dad's only worked with Shawn Porter, but essentially Shawn Porter is, in a lot of ways, is all that Kenny Porter knows. And it's not that he couldn't coach anyone else, but who else can give him the same kind of energy that Shawn Porter gives? And I think that my dad has kind of run into guys like that before who did give the kind of energy and things like that I did, and those guys, and he was successful with those guys, you know. My dad has coached the Olympic training teams and different international teams and stuff like that. So my dad is a great coach in my personal opinion. What's next for you, champ? That's from Ty Green. I'm not sure right now. I'll tell you what, I'm really missing Fox Studios, the PBC Inside PBC Boxing show. I've enjoyed doing that for the last year and a half now, going on 2 years, I believe, and it's been amazing. And I can't wait to get back to that. And of course, I can't wait to get back in the ring. I think once this all blows over and we start to kind of get back into the groove of things, I think then we'll have a better perspective of who we can go after and when we can go after them. But right now, and especially, again, like I said earlier, not fighting in front of a crowd really bothers me. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to answer this question because actually I'm same thing with my son. This is from Ernie or Henry Vargas. Did your dad spank you when you were a kid? My dad makes this joke. People will say, your son's great. And my dad says, you know the trick? And they say, no, what'd you do? Beat him. he skipped the word spank. He said beat him. He says if you want him to be great, beat him. It's a joke. Yes, my dad spanked me. Yes, my dad, disciplined me and things like that. No, my dad was never malicious and just, my dad never dogged me, but my dad, he grew up getting spankings, so I think he understood, hey, I would give my son spankings. But I think he also just really had a good grasp on how he wanted to discipline us and raise us. And I think that, I think he knew when to cut it off, and he actually had a conversation with myself and my brother one time. He said, hey, you guys are getting too big for me to be whooping you, for me to be spanking you. I don't want to do this anymore. He said, just do what you're told to do and we'll live a good life, So can't really say how all that really, transpired and ended. But, at this point, I can say that the whoopings definitely worked. My son's 2, and I find myself doing that to my son now. I'm just trying to really get through to him what right and wrong is. And, the one thing that I do is I make sure that I'm not whipping him because I'm mad. I'm not whipping him because I'm upset. I think then it becomes a personal attack. And so when I get at my son, I just simply get at him to make sure that he's doing the right things that he needs to be doing. He's only 2. So, how bad can you really spank a 2-year-old? But, hey, it happened to me. So, and again, I'm not saying I'm, passing on the buck. But at the same time, I do know what it's done for me. It instilled everything. Discipline, class, understanding, respect, and so on. So, that's how we get down in the Porter's household too. What's up? Is he getting stuff? What is he doing? My dad's in the backyard. I'm not going. All right, just tell him I'm on here and I'm busy. Thank you. I told him you beat our son.
His dad's out there with him.
Okay. At what point is Kenny gonna call out Bo Mac and make this start rolling? No comment. No comment. No comment.